everything, and anyone who's in your way.
Ken Andrews is such a cool guy. Whenever I come across his interviews, I always think like, man, I wish I could hang out with that guy and like geek out about music or film or the crazy life that he's led. By the way, do you know who Ken Andrews is? I assume if you clicked on this video, you do. He's best known as the singer-guitarist of the band Failure. Failure's most well-known album is the 1997 record Fantastic Planet. But Ken Andrews is an amazing guy. He is also a music producer, a mixer, and in his early career, he directed music videos. And over the last couple of years, he directed Failure's career-spanning documentary, Every Time You Lose Your Mind. He worked on this for actually several years, and it finally came out last year. So the man is very talented, and also he edited this as well. But in this video, I don't want to talk about Failure. I want to talk about Ken Andrews without Failure. So after Failure broke up in 1997, Ken Andrews went on to do a bunch of amazing projects, solo work, and also working with other collaborators, making new bands, and so on. So this video is not a ranking. I'm going to actually go chronologically because I really can't rank these records, but I'm going to talk about 4 records that I think are really interesting and really great outside of the Failure catalog. And so those records are 1995's Replicants, the self-titled supergroup, super collaboration. This record, phenomenal record that a lot of people haven't ever heard of. The second is On, that's the artist name is On, and the album is called Shifting Skin. This is from the year 2000. Basically, On is just Ken Andrews with a few collaborators, especially people helping him out with drums and violins and guitar solos and things like that. Think of it kind of like Nine Inch Nails. It's like a one-man band electronic album. Fantastic record. Next, from 2003, Year of the Rabbit, a self-titled record. Ken Andrews forming a band again, post-Failure, his first band. And this is a very interesting record as well. And finally, the 2007 record, Secrets of the Lost Satellite, released under his own name, Ken Andrews, Secrets of the Lost Satellite. Yeah, all 4 of these records have their good points and bad points, and more good points than bad points, honestly. So I hope you'll join me for this very special episode of Late Listening. I'm Chris, and let's talk about Ken Andrews without Failure. Alright, I just finished making a video about the 1995 record Replicants, this supergroup with Ken Andrews and Greg Edwards of Failure, joined by Paul D'Amour of Tool, the very first incarnation of Tool, and also Chris Pittman. So this album came about because Failure and Tool, the band Tool, were playing together. They did a bunch of shows together, and they really liked hanging out with each other. There's an article from the Daily Bruin from March 5th, 1996. This was conducted by Vanessa van der Zanden. Ken Andrews says, "We would just make fun of them constantly, and they did the same, them being Tool. It was good." Later, after Tool played Lollapalooza, the 2 bands toured again. Tool was on tour supporting Undertow, their record from 1993, and Failure was supporting Magnified, their record from 1994. And after Lollapalooza, they noticed that the crowds kept getting bigger and bigger. And Ken Andrews says, "The crowds were about 3,000 people bigger. Our other bands were taking up too much of our energy, so we'd just occasionally get together and have some beers and play a cover song for fun." But he never thought that the jam sessions would really amount to anything. It was kind of like a little vacation in a way. It was fun for me to play bass because I don't usually play bass. And then in a 2003 interview with Tape Op, Ken Andrews kind of detailed the birth of the Replicants album. Basically, they had sat down with Slash Records, and they had talked about how their first 2 records, Comfort and Magnified, they were kind of unhappy with how the records turned out, and they wanted to produce it themselves. And so they sat down with Slash Records and kind of explained their plan to make the album Fantastic Planet. Slash Records gave the okay, and so they kind of lied and said that they had this house that they could record in, but what they actually had was just this small rehearsal space. And so they brought all this gear into the rehearsal space, and Ken Andrews and Paul D'Amour from Tool were hanging out at the time. And Chris Pittman was also hanging out with them. And by the way, if you don't know who Chris Pittman is, he was in Guns N' Roses for like almost 2 decades. Like, I think he was in there for like 18 years or something. One of the longest supporting members of GNR. And he was also in some obscure indie bands such as Mystery Man, Iron Triangle, Sex Tapes, Zaum, which has Danny Carey of Tool playing synthesizers, and also Blinker the Star, and even Lusk, the great band Lusk, founded by Paul D'Amour after he left Tool. And in fact, it was founded around the same time as Replicants. All right, so basically everybody was hanging out in this rehearsal space, and they were kind of jamming. They were all playing different instruments that they normally wouldn't play. And Ken Andrews was still figuring out like what it meant to be a producer. Like he had just gotten some ADATs, and he was figuring out like the wiring and like setting up the microphones and everything. So this record in a way is kind of like the demos and like the test tracks, or like, him kind of playing with the studio and seeing like, testing the levels and checking out like how the equipment all worked. And that's why the sound of this record is so similar to Fantastic Planet, because all the gear was the same, and Ken Andrews produced both of these records. It's funny to think that an album this well produced was, in Ken Andrews' words, demos, basically. He says, "We recorded these demos, and it was a good test for me to just make sure everything was working before we actually rented the house and moved in and were on the clock," referring to the recording of Fantastic Planet. And then Ken Andrews went on to say, "I made a cassette. We did like 2 or 3 songs, I think, and it was literally just for fun. I didn't even think that anyone in that, it wasn't even a group, even wanted a copy of it. But Paul and Chris each got a copy." In the last month or so of recording, Paul D'Amour was hanging out with Tool's A&R guy, Matt Marshall. And according to Ken Andrews, he was freaked out and thought it was awesome. By then, he was already a big Failure fan, too. And he was like, "Why don't you guys just do a one-off record of all covers, just like this?" And then Zoo Entertainment, who was Tool's record label at the time, will put it out. And Ken Andrews' first question was, "How much money are you going to give us? What's the budget?" And so what ended up happening was Zoo Entertainment agreed to finance the Replicants album if Maynard James Keenan of Tool would sing at least one song. And so that's why Maynard is on track number 2, Silly Love Songs, because they had to get Maynard on there in order to secure the budget for an entire record. Fun fact. So the 4 covers that they had originally on that demo cassette made it onto the record, as well as the new songs. And supposedly the group had actually written one song, one original song themselves, but I've never been able to figure out what that was, or I couldn't find it anywhere, any information about it. I'm not sure if they've ever even mentioned what that even was, or whether it was just a jam. Maybe it wasn't even like finished and it was just like really like a demo, or I don't know. The ironic thing is that although these were recorded like right around the same time, the Replicants record came out about 3 months after it was finished. And Failure's Fantastic Planet did not come out for 18 months after the recording was finished. So that was one of the reasons that Failure died, was they just had such a horrible experience, and drug use had crept in. And yeah, it's amazing to me that this like was a full release, like the label was standing behind this. And I mean, the 90s were a wild time, I don't think you could do anything like this now, unless you just put it out for free on the internet, One more fun fact about the album is track 1, Just What I Needed, was the very first song that Ken Andrews ever learned how to play on the guitar. That song, of course, is originally by The Cars, and Ken Andrews is a huge fan of Rick Ocasek and The Cars. That's kind of cool that, like, first track, first song. I love that kind of thing. All right, moving on to Shifting Skin. This record from 2000. I want to read here from Ken Andrews' Instagram. So recently he was remastering this record, and on his Instagram he posted this, and I'm just going to read it in its entirety. "After Failure disbanded in 1997, I was completely lost. I had put every ounce of creativity and effort I had into my pride and joy. Sitting there in my apartment with no obvious direction or goal was unsettling. Untethered from purpose, a deep depression began to settle in. Every time I looked at my guitar, all I could think of was failure, and the pain the end had brought. That's when I decided to go to the music store near me, West LA Music, Universal City, and see if a new guitar or pedal might perk me up and inspire something. Looking at all the guitars, all I could hear was failure. I love like the double meaning of that too. Like failure, failing, failure. I was about to leave when I spotted a small desktop-sized synthesizer that was within my budget. I ended up coming home with my very first synthesizer, the Access Virus. That little synth packed a huge amount of sounds and I was hooked. All of a sudden I was able to create music that didn't have an obvious connection to Failure's sound. My love for 80s pop music, like the Cars, was streaming out of me effortlessly. I had found a way back into music making that felt therapeutic and joyful. I was also writing songs that emotionally were less dark and even playful compared to Failure. I knew some fans of Failure would probably not be into this new direction I was following, but I didn't care. I needed to do this for myself. Eventually, I had a handful of demos that I started playing for friends, and that's when my friend Matt Marshall, Tool's A&R guy, again, the same guy who helped get the supergroup Replicants onto Zoo Entertainment, helped Ken Andrews sign with Epic Records. It's just amazing. Like, Matt Marshall, thank you for your service. Where was I talking about? In 2000, my first post-Failure album was released. I called it Shifting Skin because that's what it was for me. The style and sound was a definite shift, but the underlying soul I hoped was still intact. So awesome. Yes, On is a very unique record, very, very cool record. I always kind of think in my mind of like Nine Inch Nails. The sound of this is not like Nine Inch Nails, but like the one-man band, like complete control, kind of like electronics mixed with guitars, mixed with that kind of like, not so good vocals over the top of it. Like no shade on Trent Reznor or of course Ken Andrews, but like, I don't know. I like the fact that those guys like are not that good of singers, but like they kind of do something really unique with their voice over the top of these amazing soundscapes. I don't want to say if you like Nine Inch Nails that you would like this, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I guess in my head, like I kind of fit those things together a little bit. Another good comparison to this record is actually God Lives Underwater. If you've ever heard of God Lives Underwater, wonderful band from the 90s. Sadly, the story does not go so happy for Ken Andrews. There's no happy ending to the On record. Ken Andrews was kind of doomed to failure, you could say. Like, the On record and also Year of the Rabbit, these records had the rug just pulled out from under them the same way that Fantastic Planet did. Record labels can be so cruel. So I was listening to Ken Andrews talking with Jeremy Bolm on the podcast, The First Ever Podcast, episode 189. And Ken Andrews was talking about how the song Soluble Words, which is the third track on this record, Soluble Words was top 10 on CMJ before the record was even out.
Is there something you can tell me that could make me hear the call? Everything I've heard you spill is
And both that song and also Slingshot, which is the second track, got radio play on commercial radio, especially on the West Coast, California, Seattle. But the label, Epic Records, under Sony, hadn't scheduled any singles to be released. The support was there, but the higher-ups wanted to promote Incubus instead. And supposedly Epic Records went so far as to aggressively contact radio stations that were playing On and tell them to stop playing those songs and start playing singles by Incubus from the 1999 record Make Yourself. And no shade to Incubus, like I like Make Yourself. It's a good record. But I think it's so crazy that like Ken Andrews was like his own record label was actively trying to destroy his album in favor of promoting another band. What the hell, man? Like what kind of a different like timeline would it be if like Incubus had been like a minor band and like had like maybe a Make Yourself or Drive was like a minor hit song, and then On was like the major, MTV fell in love with it and this album became huge. I don't know. Would we still have Failure in 2026, or I don't know. It's interesting to think about, like roads not traveled, paths not taken. I want to recommend 3 songs on this record. I almost kind of want to recommend the 3 songs that are like listed on the sticker because they're all really good. But yeah, track 1, Come On Collapse. It's a very interesting blend of acoustic guitar, synthy strings. It's really catchy, really poppy, much poppier than Failure. Also, Jordan Zadorozny, am I saying that right? Jordan Zadorozny from Blinker the Star plays the guitar solo on this, and that marks the beginning of many collaborations between Ken Andrews and Jordan. Of course, Slingshot is really good. I want to recommend track 2, Slingshot, but also track 3, Soluble Words, my favorite song on the record. Soluble Words is a great build. It has really weird lyrics referencing like Seconal and like Ken Andrews' favorite lyrical topic, which is sleep. And the last song I want to recommend from here is track number 8, Feel at Home. Feel at Home is like an unexpectedly smooth 80s ballad. You can make love to it, but it's hard to know whether it's like bringing home a damaged girlfriend or even like a pet from the vet or something. I don't know. When he sings about restoring her, I feel like he could just as easily be talking about a vintage synthesizer. All right, next we have Year of the Rabbit from 2003. And before I get into it, on a side note, when this was coming out, I was very excited because I had really liked On, and I was like, oh man, Ken Andrews is coming back with like a band. That's really cool. Maybe it's going to be like, sounds like Failure or like something totally different. And also, Greg Edwards, the bassist and multi-instrumentalist from Failure, was coming out with the record Autolux, so he had a new project as well. And that didn't come out until 2004. So this was 2003 and 2004, but like buzz was like really big for both these records at the time. And in record reviews of Year of the Rabbit, some reviewers were wondering like what Greg Edwards' project was going to sound like. And so I was really, really excited when both of these came out back in the early 2000s. So Ken Andrews recorded the Hunted EP with Jeff Garber and Solomon Snyder, that's lead guitar and bass respectively. And they released the Hunted EP on CD Baby and iTunes. Remember CD Baby? Remember iTunes?
Is that what you needed?
And there was enough excitement that Elektra Records said, yeah, let's make a record. We'll sign you. And almost like a curse, the same situation happened. I'm reading here from an interview with Nashville Scene, the Cream interview. And Ken Andrews was talking about his friend Tim Dow, who was On's live drummer. And Tim Dow is from the band Shiner. He said to Ken, man, you can't just walk away. You got to come back and do something. And when you come back, you should do a rock band and not do an electronic thing. And for some reason, when he told me that, it was just kind of appealing at that point in time. That's how Year of the Rabbit came about. And then the same thing kind of happened again. Completely different label, completely different circumstances, but basically just a few months into that record being released, Elektra got folded into the Atlantic Records group. And they only kept like 3 or 4 artists. So it was like, okay, I guess I didn't learn the first time. And then I thought, if I ever do something artist-wise, it's going to be on my own terms, on my own label, and that's how the Ken Andrews solo stuff happened. Poor Ken Andrews. I feel so bad for this man. Like, Elektra was folded into, or I like to say consumed into, Atlantic Records. Warner Music Group was sold to private investors, and they kind of consolidated everything. But anyway, it's hard to choose a track on this album to recommend. I think the best lyrics are number 9, track number 9, River, where he sings, I want to be sober. Yeah, I want to be like a river. Just let my life float through me. But I can't connect with a loaded gun in my hand. The shipwreck stories and, those really great really great lyrics on that track. I'd like to recommend, I guess, track number 1, Rabbit Hole. That's actually from the Hunted EP. Re-recorded for this, and it's a really cool rock song. I don't know, straight ahead rock song. He's got some nice lyrics about cold sweat with cocktail jazz, and we can get high again.
Is this the dream that I always have? Cold sweats with some cocktail jazz. I never thought I could hit this high. A long way down. She said it doesn't have to feel this way. Sit down, boy, 'cause you don't have to go. 'Cause we can get
I think the H sound, when you make an H sound when you're singing, like it takes a lot of your breath away. I've heard, and so maybe that's why he says like we can get I again rather than we can get high again. I'm not really sure, but anyways, that's kind of funny. Track 2, Lie Down, also really great, like crazy dissonant chords on that song, but it's still really catchy.
We're just temporary souls in a comic chapter, scraping out the mold from an old reactor. Come on, pretty baby, would you take a taste with me? Take a taste with me. If I lie down, would you lie?
Also track 8, Hunted, that was also on the Hunted EP. The dissonance is insane on that song, and I don't know how he can make such catchy, poppy songs out of like the weirdest chords. I've always been fascinated by Ken Andrews' ability to make these like, almost like ugly sounding chords into this beautiful, like catchy, kind of pop song. It's a bizarre gift that he has. Anyway. Oh, and also track 7, Let It Go, has a really interesting intro, one of the strongest rock intros. And I feel like maybe this is Ken Andrews' early like Rush influence. Kind of sounds like a Rush song a little bit. All right, last but not least, actually maybe my favorite. I don't really want to go into like my favorites. This is not a ranking video, but this is such a great record. Ken Andrews' Secrets of the Lost Satellite from 2007. And this was the first album on his own record label, which is Dinosaur Fight Records. He created his own record label just to release this under his own name. My God, this is an amazing record. This is like, I could listen to this all the way through. Every single track on here is absolutely amazing. According to Sputnik Music, in the review of this album, Ken Andrews had intended to do everything himself, from writing and recording to producing, as he did on the On record, and maybe bring in some collaborators. And so what this is, the basic tracks are essentially his chords, his melodic ideas, and everything that he already laid down to make a kind of an electronic record. But then what ended up happening was his co-producer, Justin Meldal Johnson, suggested bringing in Beck's touring band to overdub a lot of the tracks that Ken had already laid down. And so you get this really interesting blend of like electronic rock, and because there's like basically 2 recording sessions, it's incredibly deep. Like the music has such a depth to it. There's so many layers, because Ken Andrews himself always layers, I mean, his music, just like when he's making his solo stuff, it's like, it's really great to listen to. You kind of fall into it. But then it's like he has those tracks, and then on top of it, he brings in Beck's touring band, as well as some of the members from Year of the Rabbit also appear on this record. So I think one of these songs was a Year of the Rabbit song that was like a B-side. In Your Way, track 3. Yeah, track 3 was actually intended as a Year of the Rabbit song, and that's actually one of my favorite songs on this record. So I'd like to recommend track 3, In Your Way. Such a phenomenal one of Ken Andrews' greatest songs in his whole catalog. Failure fans, you can fight me. Number 4, Secret Things. Also really cool. That song has a really weird beat, and the strings, punctuating strings come in, and like the bass, I don't know if that's a bass guitar or a synthesizer or whatever's going on with the bass in that song is also amazing. And then it's so hard to pick like recommended songs from this, but maybe track number 5, Write Your Story. I like this one because it doesn't really sound like a typical Ken Andrews track. It was co-produced and co-written with Jordan Zadorozny from Blinker the Star. And I really love the minor key chorus of the song. the really cool acoustic guitar. I love it when Ken Andrews uses acoustic guitar. And again, the weird chords, crazy chords in this song every time. All right. This video is already getting too long, so I'm just going to end it here. Ken Andrews also has other projects. He worked with the Digital Noise Academy, and he also made another record under the On name, which is called Make Believe. A pretty good record as well. So anyway, I just wanted to celebrate Ken Andrews. There's a new Failure record coming out soon, and I've been really enjoying the Failure documentary, Every Time You Lose Your Mind, and I just really like that guy, and I wanted to make a video about Ken Andrews without failure. So let me know your favorite Ken Andrews non-failure tracks, and what's your favorite record outside of Failure that he's worked on, or, you know, leave me a comment. Whatever is fine. I don't care. Tell me something. It helps the algorithm. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you watched to this point in the video, big thanks. And I'll see you again.